Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. This is Erev Shabbos, Parshas Tetzaveh, Shushan Purim. We will have gone through an incredible Purim. Hopefully hit some places and some thoughts, some feelings on Purim of opening our eyes and seeing the Yad Hashem, the hand of God, signed all over our lives. Parsha Tetzaveh begins the second of the two Parshas that deal with the building of the Mikdash, that deal with collecting of all the materials, with this week's Parsha, the Big Day Kahuna, the clothes of the high priest. You would imagine that the Parsha would launch into the clothes of the priest and the high priest. And instead, the Parsha begins, V'yati Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'yikhu elecha shemen zayis zoch, kasis lamor, that you should gather together the oil in order to be able to light the menorah, lahalos ner tamid, in order that the light should be there always. And our rabbis wonder that why is it that we're talking about the functioning, seemingly the functioning of the Mikdash, the lighting of the menorah. The lighting of the menorah is one of the functions, one of the things that we did daily in the Mikdash, in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary. But this is not a parsha of the daily workings of the temple. This is the parsha of the building of the temple. It's the binyan of the Mishkan. And it's in the wrong parsha. It's in the parsha that deals with the clothes. All the stuff of the building of the vessels and all the stuff of the building materials, that was in last week's Parsha. Why is this in this week's Parsha? And why is something that has to do with the functioning of the temple here in this section of the Torah? And some of our rabbis look at this and they say that you have to understand, clearly this is not about the functioning of the temple, because it wouldn't be here. But rather what this is telling us is that turning on the lights is part of the building of the temple. You can build a building, but if the lights aren't on, then the building is not complete. There has to be something inside. There has to be some substance. There has to be some light. And when there is light, that's when the building is completed. And that's why in last week's Parsha, we talk about all the materials, getting it all together, getting it all ready. This is what we build. This is what we make. And the beginning of this week's Parsha, we conclude the building of the Mishkan with turning on the lights. You know, we say a very beautiful line. We say, V'hareinu b'vinyanai, v'samchenu b'sikunai, that God should be able to let us behold the building, and then we'll rejoice in its completion. But if we saw the building of the Mikdash, then that's enough to make us rejoice. But perhaps what God is telling us is, we'll see the building, but the rejoicing will only come once the lights are on. Because when the lights are on, there's something real. That's when it's completed. There's a beautiful story that they tell of a fellow that was a guard by a train crossing. And his job was to go out at night when a train was coming and to stand and to wave a lantern to let people know that the train was on its way so that they would stop their cars and they wouldn't, God forbid, cross over and cause an accident. It was a stormy, rainy night. It was very difficult to see. And there was a terrible accident. And a train destroyed a car and all of the passengers inside. The family of the passengers sued the train company. And in the trial, they called the watchman to the stand and they asked him, were you waving your light? He said, I was waving my lantern. Did you wave it in all directions? I waved it in all directions. And at the end of the trial, they didn't find the train company guilty. And the train company was overjoyed. And they lifted up this fellow as their hero. And they were dancing with him down the steps of the courtyard. And he turned to somebody and he said, I'm lucky that they never asked me if the lantern was on. We spend so much of our lives waving a lantern, putting up buildings, doing things, but not always are the lights on. When the lights are on, that's when we know we've completed something. And that's when we have joy and happiness. La Yehudim haisa ora v'simcha v'sasim v'yikar. Because we didn't just go through the motions. Our emotions were filled with light. That's the message of the beginning of this week's Parsha. The conclusion of the building is not putting in the last bricks. The conclusion of the building is turning on the lights. Our Shabbos should be illuminated. Our days and our nights should be illuminated. And we should be able to fulfill that bracha, not just the sentence, but the blessing inherent in the Megillah. La Yehudim haisa oira v'simcha v'sasim v'yikar. We should merit much light in our lives each and every day. Have a beautiful, amazing, wonderful, lichtige Shabbos.